Morning Glory host Matty Johns joins us thanks to New Tech, PNEU. Tech is the way to do that. Matthew Johns, good afternoon to you.
Fellas, how you doing, boys? What's happening?
No, we're just we're looking about just checking on the mushroom cook. She's been found guilty here in Patterson.
Yeah.
I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into it. It's heavy, mate. Heavy.
You like your true crime, don't you, Fletch?
I do,
I know
you're. Yeah, I would have been a great detective. I feel because I like asking a lot of questions.
Well, you do have a curious mind.
I do have a curious mind, but I've been getting involved with that. I've also been watching and getting on YouTube and looking at the videos from Oasis. They had their first concert. They sound awesome.
Where was that, Brian?
Was it
Millennium Stadium, Cardiff.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And they've they were saying before. I listened to a guy who is a really respected critic, but also an Oasis fan. He's got a podcast I listen to quite a bit. He said Liam was as good as he's ever seen him and heard him. He said he was sensational. He said Noel looked a little nervous. He said, but all in all, he said it was huge success. He said it was fantastic.
Liam's on lead guitar. Is that correct?
Noel
is
lead guitar.
Okay, but Liam's just he's the front man with the tambourine.
He's the front man, mate. He's the one that's got the swagger, and he's the image of Oasis.
Well, they need that. Cardiff needed something because the Wales national team,
Welsh,
the Welsh national team, they've lost like 18 tests in a row. They were recently beaten by the Japanese. Mate.
It's unreal. Considering, like, when you go back to the 70s and 80s, like the Welsh were one of the greatest rugby nations. I mean, some of the ones that came across the rugby league way, way, way back in the day, of course, the great Billy Boston, and then we had Jonathan Davies more frequently. But back in the day, Gareth Edwards, Barry John, those guys, they were just machines. But they've dropped off massively.
Speaking of the UK, not English, but we had Gary Schoefield on. So how good was he, Matty? I knew he could speak, but even his analysis of the game and stuff like that, he doesn't miss much, does he?
Fletch, he is one of the great players. Like, being a Balmain Tiger fan growing up, when he came out to Australia, when he signed at Balmain for the first time, boys, he was 19.
Yeah.
He played for Great Britain at 17, toured Australia at 18. I was listening to him on Kenty's podcast, and he was saying that when he was 16, he was watching the 1982 Kangaroo Tour, sitting in the stands with his dad, just going, mate, Mal Meninga, and look at this guy, Steve Rogers. Mate, how do you stop these blokes? They're unstoppable. And then he said 2 years later, he's standing on the SCG looking across at him. Yeah. Scored an amazing try in that game, but just a freakish player. And the thing I loved about players of that era, the English players of that era, like Scully and Ellery Hanley, was they didn't try to play a watered-down version of Australian football. They actually played. England had a style. It was totally unorthodox. And those two blokes in particular, like chipping over the top on tackle 2 and 3 and just backing themselves, they're just great players. But you're right, Fletch. He was fantastic. And in a lot of ways, he's been ostracised in some circles in England just because he's too honest.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I thought, because he was in the media, but he stepped down. I thought it was because of his health, because he's come out and said he's had a few issues with his health. But then I was talking to a gentleman saying, no, he's a bit brazen. He's a bit Has he? Because I thought he was brilliant on Sunday night.
Fantastic. Fletch, just a little bit of respect goes a long way, and I reckon it would have been 5-6 years ago, or maybe more. Might have been more. Time goes quick. But he and Ellery were out here the last time they were out here. We're at Triple M and he came in. I was having a chat to both of them, and they sort of alluded to that they just don't get the respect that they deserve in England. They didn't. That wasn't in their words. That's how I took it. And they said it's amazing about Australia. They said, Matty, as soon as we hopped off the 747. Mate, all the baggage handlers at Qantas and everyone were going, hey, Pearl, Scoey, g'day, boys. And everyone knew him. And Scoey was saying the other night, he just said, everywhere I go, he said, people are just so welcoming. And he just doesn't get that back in England. And his mates, mate, weren't his mates a bunch of dead shits? They were fantastic.
But I was saying to Matty, Matty, 7 years away.
Yeah.
Because they were all 60 because Scoey's turned 60. And I'm going, they looked 100.
Mate, Fletch.
And I'm going,
Mate, I was shocked. The little bloke who looks like a sawn-off version of Alexi Sale off Young Ones. I said to him, I said to him, I said, mate, how well did you go to school with Scoey or something, right? And he goes, oh, no, mate, no. I said, oh, how old are you? And he said, oh, you're 58. And I just went, mate, I felt so good about myself, mate. I grew 6
but
inches.
that's what they do up there in the north of England. They just drink so much piss.
Brian, we're getting on Origin. Before we do so, what do you see there?
Raper Street,
and
Davey Street,
yes.
and Brett Whiteley Studios.
Yeah, so Davey Street and Raper Street. So a mate of mine, Glenn Hogan, funny man. If the Rat would vouch for this, very funny man. And about once a month, he'll send me a photo of street signs and he'll throw out some names.
Ah, gotcha.
And the reason I say that is because I've not heard the name Jonathan Davies for 10 years. And he literally sent me this an hour ago before Matty mentioned it. Jonathan. Which qualifies for Davies and Raper. And, mate, it's a small world. Yeah. And the son of the great, late Kevin Hogan. We've got a big game coming up, Matthew, a big game coming up. How do you see this playing out?
Well, look, it's... the Game 2 was the perfect Origin narrative. When you go through... If you had to explain State of Origin to someone who's got no idea... Game 2 was the narrative. Yep. New South Wales 1-0 up in the series. Queensland completely struggling. New South Wales powerhouse on paper. Queensland little chance. Queensland win, right? Game 2, honestly, I think it's an even stronger narrative, how it lends itself to State of Origin history, in the fact that, for all intent, like it's 1-1, but we're at home. It's the decider. They've never won a decider at a core stadium. Our side, we're power and ready to go. They've had to bring in Shibasaki and different. They've had to move players around. I tell you, boys, and I'll just preface this by saying I don't like to bring in certain things like the passing of Cameron's dad Steve on it, but I just know the way that this Queensland side will rally around Cameron, and and Cameron's ability to compartmentalise and be mentally tough, and mate, he will be out there to play the game of his life for his dad. That from a New South Wales perspective, that worries me. That's thrown just an extra little bit of something which you need to take into perspective when trying to pick a winner. I thought at the beginning of the week when we were about $1.42, I actually thought that was quite generous. At our end, I thought, that's pretty good. But now, man, I'm starting to think that it's going to be a lot tighter than I first thought.
Yeah, I agree, Matthew. I had us 13 plus. When you look at them on paper, the only thing I'm looking at is the second half against what we did. Yep. We evened up the possession and we scored 18 or 20 unanswered points. We played we played down their end of they couldn't get out of their own.
For 3 of the quarters, we have smashed them.
Yeah, and they couldn't get out of their own end. They had absolutely nothing, because our back five are arguably the best back five in the world at getting out of trouble. They could not get out. So I'm leaning, and as you mentioned, Matty, now they've got the motivation. Well, Cam Munster has the motivation to come out. But I still think we're going to be too good.
Yeah. I think what encapsulates the mismatch on paper is Robert Toya and Gemma Shibasaki against Crichton and Latrell. And as Scoey said the other night, and we've spoken about this a few times on radio, fellas, and Scoey alluded to it, he said Latrell and Crichton are the closest things I've seen to Mal Meninga and June Miles. And he said it, Scoey. He said, mate, they need to do what they did a few years ago with Tom Travojevic and Latrell. They need to link and play together. And he said, mate, they'd nearly be unstoppable. And I expect them to do that. They've just got to get them nice, early, clean ball. And the other big factor is, of course, as you said, Fletch, our discipline is just imperative. But, fingers crossed that Nathan is close enough to 100% that he can do all aspects of his kicking. Don't care if he doesn't goal kick. Just, the long kicking, the short kicking, the high kicks. When he's really on there, mate, we score points. We get repeat sets. We dominate territorial, and he builds pressure. And if you remove everything in the game and just put it down to a battle between Hammer and Nathan Cleary, the winner of that little battle, go a long way to decide who wins the game.
Do you feel it's unfair that people are saying, "Oh, he hasn't dominated at Origin"? Like,
Yeah.
I find it. I mean, he's been very, very good at Origin. Like, he hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, now he's going to go past Joey and Mitchell Pearce as the Blues' most capped halfback.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's a bit.
Geez, it's funny because he's played in fits and starts, and he's been injured and then back in and injured. I thought he would have been a fair way off that. Yeah, Fletch, I do think it's a little unfair. I think the fact that he's just been so dominant at club level, people are waiting for that to be the natural transition to the state of origin, and mainly because of injury, he hasn't been able to do that yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did you say he's played more than Joey?
This game will be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So he's set to become the Blues' most capped halfback, which it snuck up on us.
Yeah.
No, there's a couple of things that I think are really important. I think like Jerome Luai's got to have a big one. I think sometimes Jerome gets into the habit and he skims across the defence, step across. Mate, he's just got to look to penetrate the defence line. Just stick his nose through, play the ball quick, and then, sometimes kick-start the roll that way. But our back three, of course, Edwards, To'o and Zach Lomax, it's going to be big. As you said, Fletch, that the back five on either side, when the arm wrestle starts, they're the ones that are going to decide it.
The big advantage I think we have, boys, which hasn't been spoken about, is right and left's a big thing. So we know that To'o's going to be left. We know that Lomax will play right. We know that, Latrell's a left specialist. Yep. We know that Crichton's a right specialist. Liam Martin on the right. Left side for Angus Crichton. For Queensland, you still don't know who the left winger is, who the right winger is, who's the back row. What are you doing with Val? That's the hardest part Billy has, right?
Yeah. I reckon he's going to... I reckon he's going to have a surprise. I think Nenai or Carrigan will start. I just don't think they can afford... They had that dream run in that first half where you didn't have to use them, but they're not going to have that again. I reckon there's going to be either one of those two will start. I still, for the life of me, can't believe Pat Carrigan. You having Pat Carrigan in Origin game off the bench.
Can I ask you this, Fletch, and to you, Matthew, as well? Do you believe that tomorrow night, both sides, in whatever order they choose, are 1-17, or do you think there's a spanner in the works?
I think there's a spanner just for Queensland. I think we'll go 1.
Yeah, I do too.
Do you?
I think there's a spanner. I do. I think there's going to be something. Yeah, he's going to have an ace up his sleeve.
Now,
I tell you what, boys. Just on a different note, I was just doodling around yesterday. I was just thinking about who've been the best players in each position so far this year. But I went through and just sort of went down a rabbit burrow, and I thought to myself, when new sides coming in, right, with Perth coming in and PNG, everyone's been saying there is not enough player depth to go around. I did a bit of a thing on paper and wrote down a list of all the young players under 23 years of age who are playing in the NRL, who've come into the NRL in the last 12 to 18 months and are playing good. Holy dooly. Mate, in my opinion, there's going to be enough players to go around. Look at it. If we keep producing young players into the game like we've done in the last 18 months, there is going to be enough players to go around. Don't worry about that. I mean, you think about, Jeremiah Nanai. He's 22.
I know. He looks 40.
22. It's unbelievable. Go through it. Stephen Crichton, 24. Mate, some of the Reece Walsh, 23. You go through the pain has 25, and the fact that players are playing longer now. We've got a number of players. Renault on Thursday, he will turn 35, and he's playing terrific football. Players are playing into their mid-30s. Believe me, but in 5 years, there's going to be more than enough players to go around to sustain 18 teams, maybe 20. The crucial thing is producing halfbacks and getting the right coaching. Well, they're the most vital things.
Matty, I'm glad you raised that because I was going to talk about that earlier, and I totally agree. Hypothetically, boys, if you took a draft right now and said, okay, well, the coaches who are leading for the next 2 years, there's no player swaps, you've got to deal with what you got with in the juniors, etc. Top coach takes the bottom and so forth. Yep. I guarantee within 2 years, the best coaches will still find a way to be escalating up the ladder.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, like we're seeing Josiah Katapani and we're seeing, Kiraz and all these kids coming through. All of a sudden you're seeing, Jojo Fafita with Bellamy blasting through things, and they're all there.
Mm. Well, Dave Fafita. Yeah. Dave Fafita's only 24.
Yeah.
24.
Mate, it's the coaches.
Honestly, you talk about, sometimes you just wonder some place you go, why would God give someone so many gifts? They're so reluctant to use them. Like, honestly, the gifts, I hope Dave can find his focus. And I don't know whether it's the love of the game, whatever, because I don't know where his head is at the moment, but find the focus so that when he hits 29 years of age, he doesn't sit down and say, well, I blew that, because a lot of blokes have done it in the past.
Well, has he played for Australia? I know he's played Origin. Has he played for Australia?
I don't think so, Fletch.
No.
I think he's played Prime Ministers.
Okay.
But it's funny, mate, all the players, and we talked about halfbacks before, and I was thinking about Isaiah Katoa. Isn't it funny, right throughout rugby league history, there's never been, every single halfback has had a natural competitor alongside him, right through the years. If you go like Sterlo and Mortimer, Tommy and Mortimer, you go Alfie versus Ricky, and, Joey and Kamali, and some of and Alf, and it goes on. And all of a sudden you got Nathan, you're saying, well, Nathan is the dominant halfback, and suddenly this next kid comes along from out of the Penrith ranks again, and those two blokes are just going to go head-to-head over the next 10 years.
Yeah, he's a player. Now, Matthew, the game pretty much finishes about 10 o'clock, 10:30. Your brother comes on and does his stuff in the sheds. I understand that you have been getting a bit of a penchant for having haircuts at midnight. What's going on there?
Oh, Fletch, as I mentioned this to you, because tourists had got anything to say to entertain the fans. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Went down for a romantic weekend to Melbourne.
Yes.
My idea of a romantic weekend is Trish staying in the hotel and me going out with Robbie Kearns and Robbie Ross. Anyway, Kearnsy, he's knocked off early. He had to go and... He had to go to work. He was on the night shift, and so me and Boo Boo were left to our devices. And didn't we jam some in? And I got up in the morning, and I spoke to Boo Boo, and I said, "Mate, how you feeling?" It was like the hangover, and he went, "Oh, mate, I'm just trying to piece it together." And he said, "Mate, I've just gone and had a look in the mirror. I've got a new haircut." And I went, what? So I've got up, gone in the mirror. I've got the haircut as well. Anyway, the bloke who owned the whiskey/barbershop sent Boo Boo through all these photos. Mate, we were absolutely skinned and come across like this barbershop joint at about 11:30 midnight and got in there and had a haircut. And the weird thing about it, I reckon it's just about the best haircut I've ever had.
Oh, really?
And, Matty, are you allowed to drink while you're sitting in the chair?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And the best thing, the drinks were free.
Oh, you'd love that. You would froth on that.
Oh, I was frothing on it. And apparently he was playing Oasis for us.
Oh, that's great.
Mate, it was just the perfect night.
What a geezer.
Hey, Matthew, it sounds like that man Boo Boo, Robbie Ross, who was one of the great support players, was supporting on a great night. And we've got to go, mate. We appreciate that. And remember, boys, back in the day, there'd be some kind of shows you'd be watching and say, Super Boo, good dog. They'd be signing off that way. What were those shows? Family Ties.
Say that again.
Family Ties.
Boo-Boo. No, that wasn't the actors. It was the
Sid
credits.
The credits. Super Boo, good dog.
Remember the other one?
It was the production company.
That's right. Exactly
and
right.
the Seinfeld one had the lighthouse.
That's it. That's
right.
Okay, we're getting bullied. We've got to go, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Can't help yourself, tourist, can you?
See that, tourists? Everyone's turning on you.
This is becoming Groundhog Day, where two things happen. The Green Machine win, and our man does it again. He has picked our man, Tootsie Croker. 4 of his last 5 have been winners. Hello to you, Jarrod.
How you going, boys?
Never called you Jarrod. That felt a bit awkward.
Hello, Jarrod.
Yeah.
Hey, Toots, I did notice during the week that Big Papa came out and says, well, if my NRL club is not going to offer me a contract, I might have to look elsewhere. Was he alluding to the fact that he might go to another NRL club?
Well, that's what it looked like, didn't it? Remember
Yeah.
I said the other week when you just never know if Papa's taking the piss or not. He's sort of, you just never know what he's actually telling the truth. Like one day he's going to England for 3 years, the next day he's retiring. He's a bit hard to get a gauge on Big Papa, but I did read that. I haven't spoken to him in person in the last sort of week or so. So He might just be trying to push Donny up for a few extra dollars for next year or something. Maybe you're going into an Origin game. It's always a good ploy.
Yeah, no, re-sign him.
Yep.
Give him one more year. Maybe he wants to go overseas.
He'd be great overseas.
Oh, they couldn't handle
it. He'd be hard to handle, wouldn't he?
Well, you know who's flying over there? No disrespect, but Herman SASA, old homework, he's flying over there.
Really?
Yeah, well, he was, but, I mean, Papa going, they just could not handle it.
What do you boys think about the talk around Super League potentially having a Northern Spain side and a Northern Italy side?
Italiano. Yeah, why not? Make it global.
Mate, if they had the money, if
well, they don't have the money.
Might come out of retirement.
But if somebody backed it and they could back the same money as NRL, mate, there'd be a lot of people going.
Yeah, we've tried this. Just get the game right first. The NRL are going to buy it. I feel that they're just waiting till it runs into the ground. They're going to get it very cheap.
Get it for nothing. I'll tell you what, this guy won't be cheap when he goes back on the market. And at the start of the year, Brian, we're asking our man Jarrod Tootsie Croker for breakout players. And he was very adamant a man called Kaeo Weeks could be that kid. What a game last week.
Yeah, well, he's certainly he's proved that theory, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been great all year and in the back end of last year, Kay, and he was untouchable on the weekend. He's just got that confidence about him, as all of our boys do at the moment, but just that confidence about him. And I mentioned on here before, obviously it's probably not something on the radar this year, but he's a perfect 14. You know, if he continues his form throughout the back end of this year and again started next year, then he's a perfect 14 for Origin. He can play in the halves, play in the outside backs. He can play 14. He's a perfect 14. So
which colour? Which colour team?
He's a blue. He's a blue. I already asked him before I started patting him on the back. I made sure I asked him. He's a New South Welshman, mate. So
that's a good shout.
Look, he's been amazing. He's been it's probably the best part about the boys at the moment is if you had to name someone who's our player of the year, like normally the last 4 years, I think Taps has won it and just been a standout. But it's hard to narrow it down to a couple even. The boys have been that well across the board, and Kay's certainly up there as well.
Starlo for me. Starlo's been...
Yeah, we love Tommy. We do love Tommy.
Hudson Young's been enormous.
Yeah, he's gone all right too, I suppose. Now, Tootsie, we got a text through 715. Boys, Tootsie's not the most talented croaker. Ask him about the Mrs. Marathon effort. Huge effort.
She's sitting next to me.
Oh.
She's done the marathon. She's done a fair few of them.
Bruce.
But we went up to the Gold Coast on the weekend. Yeah, Bruce went up to the Gold Coast on the weekend, and she done the half marathon on Saturday in 1 hour 28, and then backed up to the full on the Sunday.
What?
In 3 hours and 4 minutes, mind you.
60-odd Ks in 2 days.
Holy dooly.
In 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty impressive, isn't it?
That is very impressive.
How the plates of meat? Like how the feet and all the blisters and
She's fine. She's actually fine. We're heading into town now for a bit of dinner with the kids, actually. But she's she's fine. She's running. She's running the car behind me. I'm in the car. But no, she's pulled up really well considering. And then we've got the Sydney Marathon coming up. I think it's the end of August, so she'll be looking to break the 3 hour mark.
Oh,
hopefully.
Wow, that's outstanding.
What about the New York or the Boston? Is that on the cards?
Yeah, that's on the cards for her. She's mentioned that a few times. I said we'll just get to Sydney first, but I think Sydney's now a part of the Big 7 or Big 8. Big 6, she's just said. The Big 6. Sydney's a part of it now in the World Marathon. So, I'm sure there's a bit of potential down the track to maybe travel and do it as well.
That's awesome. That's
all right. That is amazing.
I wish my wife was good at something.
That's congratulations to Mrs. Croker. That is absolutely a massive achievement. What, you're still here? Well, you can see more on the Joel and Fletch socials and catch us live on SEN Radio, you beautiful humans.